Hello and welcome to Stage 1 Running Remote. My name is Pim and I work for Withlocals for Business, and we are very excited to join an already amazing group of speakers and sessions Running Remote has. We've got some very cool stuff lined up for you today, starting with a keynote presentation from our CEO, Matthijs Keij, whom I'd like to invite on to the virtual stage now. So audience, enjoy, and Matthijs, take it away.
All right, thank you, Pim. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening even for some of you. Thank you for attending this presentation. My name is Matthijs Keij and I'm the CEO of Withlocals. So you might wonder, what is a travel company doing at a conference geared towards running remote? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you today. The mission of Withlocals is to connect people with cultures. And before COVID, that translated into connecting travelers to local guides for a unique experience of the local culture, and also a memorable story that you bring home to your family and friends. But today, it's different. So as a company, we are now doing online experiences for companies, but it's still about connecting people and cultures. So with that, let's go to the first part of this presentation. And we are going to talk about working from home. So in March of this year, I suddenly had to close our office due to COVID. So of course, we had experience with colleagues working remotely, but this shift was on another scale. And many of our team members said later on, we are actually missing the option to go to the office a couple of days a week. So what are we going to do? And once this whole pandemic is over, are we going to go back to the office? Well, my answer would be no. We are not all immediately going back to the office, which means working from home. This is not forever. But what is forever is something else. And we call it working from anywhere, because of course, you don't have to go to an office to work. An office has a lot of benefits, or a co-working space. We are going to talk about that, but it's really about working from anywhere. We are all social beings, so we like to be with people. But freedom, that's also an important element of that social process. Freedom to work from anywhere. And that freedom helps us to be happy, to be creative, and to grow. So working from anywhere, that is the new reality. So what is then the value of an office or a co-working space? Do we still need it? Is it obsolete? Something of the past? Well, probably not. And I guess it depends a little bit on the type of company you are. Maybe some of you have been working remotely forever, also before COVID started. But I'm sure that many of you worked in an office, maybe not 5 days a week, but an office also has benefits. You can share connections with your colleagues. For new people, onboarding is a lot easier if you can actually meet people. As a company, it's also easier to embrace the same company mission and to follow the leaders. So we're all concerned, how can we continue to build and leverage our culture if the office or the co-working space is not the central place in our working life anymore? So culture. Culture is really the answer to that question. But what is culture? Culture is not something that you pick up and then you can say, now we have it. So it's not something an organization has. Instead, culture is something that you build. It's something that you are as a company. So if we look at culture, we can look at a couple of different elements. So I didn't make this one up. It's from an article from the Harvard Business Review. And you see 6 different elements. On the right side, you see the vision of a company, your core values, the narrative, which means the stories about founding the company, great anecdotes. All that stuff, I'm not going to cover that today. I would even say that's on your plate. But everything on the left side, place, people, practices, That is something that we are going to discuss today. And every time I will explain what is the risk, especially today, now we're all working remotely, and what are ways to resolve it. So let's start with place. So place is really important when it comes to company culture. So think about certain rituals like morning stand-ups. You can do them remotely, but it's also great if you can do them together with other people in the same room. But it's not just about work. Place also means you bump into somebody. Maybe you didn't schedule a meeting, but you have a quick chat. It can be about work, can also be about family. So place is important to forge those connections. So how can we bring those moments back when people are not working at the same place? That means we have to keep connecting people, regardless whether they are in the same office or spread out, to keep them connected to the company's mission and the company's core values. We also want to bring back those social moments. So like I said, it's not always about work. And I guess that's the tricky part with Zoom meetings. You're not always simply calling your colleagues like, yeah, I didn't have to discuss anything about work, but I just want to know what's up. Of course, it's possible, but in reality, it doesn't happen a lot. So that's also really important, bringing back those social moments. So moving on to people. I think a lot of you, just like me, started your emails with, I hope all is well. And of course, you mean it. But many times, sometimes it felt like a placeholder. But now with COVID, that sentence becomes really important because people are not always in good shape. They are concerned about their health, maybe about their financial situation, about their family. So this is becoming really important. And I'll show you a couple of stats, but a lot of people feel isolated. They have greater anxiety, higher stress levels. They feel exhausted, which is pretty serious, right? And then if we move to another research, this one is from Forbes, 8 out of 10 people said, I would go to another company if they focus more on my mental health. And I think that's also one thing I have learned in the last couple of months. This is so important. How do you take good care of the mental health of your employees? And I don't have all the answers for you, but I think something that we see in our own company, that we see with the companies that we work for, strong social connections really help to make people happier, physically healthier, and that can also translate into a better work performance. And it's not just about work performance, it's also about that feeling that you really belong to a company. You're not working for a company just to do the work. Probably you also want to work for a company because you believe in it and you want to make it work. So it's creativity, it's teamwork and collaboration. All really important when we look at the people side. So we discussed place, we discussed people. What about practices? So practices means what are you actually doing as a company? So one example that's also really top of mind for a lot of you is diversity and inclusion. Important topic. Now, during COVID, a lot of companies decided, let's put this on hold. We're not going to put in any additional effort. Well, especially now, it is even more important. Same goes for proximity. Like proximity means you're close to a person. So you're in the elevator with your colleagues, you see somebody in the hallway. And there is a lot of research that says that it's a lot easier to connect with people if you are physically close to them. So you actually meet them in the hallway, for instance. So can we find ways to let you also connect to other people that maybe are not directly in your own environment? And of course, there are ways to do that. So I have a couple of bullets. We can focus more on the different cultures in an organization. So can we make it easier for you to connect with different cultures? And that can be team members, can be customers, can also be strangers. It all helps to develop a better understanding of other people. Can we involve family? And of course, maybe that's not something that you always want to do, but it also helps to break down barriers. You get to see a little bit more about your colleagues. What are good ways to do that? And the last one, I already said it, we are a travel company. So what better way to meet new people and new cultures than traveling? Well, traveling is pretty difficult today, but what about virtual traveling? So that's also something we're going to explain to you in a second. So this is my final slide before I move to a fireside chat. Solutions are not for work, in my opinion. Solutions should really focus on building meaningful connections at work. And I'm more than happy to tell you all about solutions, but I thought it's actually better to talk to somebody, and that is Hannah. Hannah is one of our local guides who has a lot of experience working with companies doing online experiences. So I decided to invite Hannah to this session to ask her about her own experience and how can we help companies to overcome those challenges. So Hannah, if you are here, we can start our conversation.
Yes, hello.
All right. Maybe you're still on mute, Hannah. Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Hannah.
Can you hear me now?
Maybe Hannah, let's start with a quick intro from your side.
Absolutely. My name's Hannah, and I'm an artist based in Barcelona, and I've been working with locals since 2018, guiding tours mostly based around the architecture of the city, Antoni Gaudí, and various museums as well, including Picasso and Miro.
Cool, thanks. Hey, and I talked about doing online experiences for companies, helping them to create these connections. I know that you recently did a mosaic painting workshop, right?
Yes, absolutely. I've been doing, since the quarantine, I've been doing some different online workshops, and yeah, just switching to virtual like a lot of people.
Cool. And can you maybe tell us a little bit more about how do companies perceive those, let's call them online experiences? What are their reactions? What is the engagement interaction? Because yeah, I guess they can also decide to simply watch YouTube or Netflix. They don't have to do anything. How is this different from that?
Yeah, I think that the difference is on YouTube, even if you're going to be following a tutorial of some kind of art practice or learning how to do a new skill, you don't have the communication within the group. So I was leading these workshops, and yes, people were following along with the actual painting practice and following what I was leading them through, but we were also able to talk during the whole experience, which allowed me to kind of give them some information about Barcelona, which I could see got people really excited, because those who had been to Barcelona, it kind of brought all these memories back. And for those who hadn't, we were all kind of getting excited for being able to travel again and thinking about the future. And we even had multiple conversations about our experiences working on Zoom. So it just made everyone feel more connected, like we're not in this alone. Everyone is dealing with adapting to these new platforms. And so, yeah, it just is a new sense of connection on top of the fun aspect of doing something like a painting workshop.
Cool. And when I talk to people, I guess there's like two different parties. One says this has a huge potential, and I think even a big company like Airbnb, they also really believe in online experiences for consumers, but also for companies. And then there are people who say, well, when this is over, COVID, people just go back to normal, and you really don't need any online experience at all. What do you think? Is this something that is here to stay, or is it more like a temporary thing?
I think that it should be here to stay because, not everyone has the ability to travel. They might not have the money to travel. They might not have the time to travel. And in having these online platforms, it allows people to connect from very different places that may not have the mobility. So I see that as something that should definitely continue in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, totally agree. Very good points. And then if we think back of a couple of the slides I showed, so when you're doing an online experience for companies, I think one challenge is always how do you keep people engaged, because people are already doing so many video calls in a week. Um, so do you have any best practices that you can share how you keep people engaged, whether that's technology, content, the way you interact with the attendees?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen is if you're doing something physical while talking with people, you're going to be engaged in one way or another because they're listening to me. I would have a camera on my hands and a camera on my face. So as I'm explaining to them and they can see my face explaining to them the steps, they're also watching me paint and they're seeing my hands and they're painting. So when you're doing workshops that involve some kind of physical activity, I think it's very easy to keep the engagement on that level. Now, on the other side, you really do need to kind of, I don't know, just be natural and talk, and not even necessarily talk about painting the whole time or whatever your topic is. But like I said, we talked about Zoom, we talked about our different experiences during the quarantine, and just, I don't know, just being open and having conversations, and it really gets people much more relaxed and starting to connect in
Yeah,
a better.
yeah, makes sense. And I guess if I look at my own experience, when this all started, the pandemic, I think a lot of companies decided let's simply replace the Friday afternoon drinks with a virtual event, which can be fun, right? But then if you do it this Friday, next Friday, and the Friday after, at some point, people feel like, yeah, here I'm sitting again behind my screen with a glass of wine, a beer, a glass of water. Um, so then it don't really sticks. So if you think back of the experiences you did, how did people respond? Like for them, what was the most interesting part that would also make them want to come back to another experience?
Yeah, I think that the combination of having an activity which for some people they had never done before, um, that was one thing that it felt fresh and it felt new to them. And I also think that relating it to culture and relating it to, learning a little bit of the history about a place, um, also made it kind of new, interesting, new information, not just sitting around talking, but also, learning about something and learning about another culture.
Yeah. And then, and I know that you are not the person who is leading HR in all those organizations that are attending this conference, but is there anything that you can share in terms of how is this helping companies to keep their employees engaged, to keep them connected to each other, to the company culture? Anything that you would like to share with those people?
Yeah, I just think that from my perspective, it really helps for companies to have their employees do something completely unrelated to their work.
Yeah.
And because they can connect on a different, more personal level, as opposed to constantly being on Zoom in meetings or with all more serious content. So I think that it's really important for people to get to know each other on this more personal level. And when you're doing a fun exercise together, it opens up that opportunity.
All right. I think with that, we arrived at the last 10 minutes of this discussion, which means that we are open to questions from the audience. And I think that also means that Pim is going to join us to moderate this last part of the session.
Yes, welcome back for me at least, and yeah, thank you, Matthijs and Hannah, for sharing these insights. As Matthijs mentioned, we are now taking questions from the people at home. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat, and I will make sure that either Hannah or Matthijs gets to answer them. For starters, I have a question for you, Matthijs. We had Cecilia in the chat who mentioned, I'm so curious about the ways we can apply these, which refer to the practices that you've talked about in your presentation. Could you perhaps give us an insight on applying these practices and how you can see that?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, I'm not pretending that we are going to solve all these challenges. So we decided, let's do what we can do best. So we have this network of really, really great local guides like Hannah all over the world. So we decided, what if we can help companies to come up with a great online experience for your own team to interact with the people in your team, the people in your company, but also interact with other people who can help them to learn something new. So basically what Hannah just described. And I guess what could be helpful is in about 30 minutes from now, we are going to host a live tour. So it's not pre-recorded, it's live with one of our local guides in Rome. So he will be out on the street with a camera. He will tell his story. And for many companies, we've used that type of experience and make it really interactive. So letting team members ask questions, tell anecdotes, learn a bit more about the Italian culture. So there are lots of ways to do that. It can be a virtual city tour. It can be a workshop with Hannah. It can be making street art together, learning about the history of a certain city. And what we find is that it really helps employees to break out of this work routine. It's not yet another Zoom meeting or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. It's something completely different. But again, that's a long answer. If you want to see more, tune in 30 minutes, and then you can also see it for yourself.
Yes, so I think that's a nice summary in the end. And also, I think one key element of that is being interactive. It's not watching a video, it's that you can also interact with the host. And for instance, like say you have to go left, or how can I do this? You can actually ask questions on the spot. And that's also a big difference, I think. Then we have another question from Davey coming in. He mentions, once employees start going back to the office, do you think these virtual connections will stay relevant? And that's, I think, for either of you to maybe answer.
Yeah, Hannah, I think you already spoke about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think that they can stay relevant, especially relating to traveling and to culture, because people are not always going to have the possibility to be in another place. So the virtual world will allow us to have these cross-cultural connections that you can't have necessarily, even in a COVID more normal time.
Yeah, and I guess for many companies, even if I look at our own company, of course, people will go back to the office. But we already have like 35-40% of people working remotely. So that will continue even after the pandemic. I think a lot of people will come to the office maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, which means that you have a lot of people who are not in the office. So that traditional setting that you have your entire team in the office, I think that's gone for a lot of companies, and that will never come back, which means it is really important to find ways to forge those connections.
Yes, and I think that indeed concludes the answer to Davy's question. We have another question from Cecilia coming in. She mentions, I'd love to know if you guys have any specific tools for these video calls that you like for maintaining engagement. I know we've heard Zoom. We probably know a few more, but maybe Hannah, you can have a go at this question.
I've personally only worked with Zoom. I don't know as much about technology as I do about art, but I have found that using the two cameras really helped, especially if you're doing something physical, because I was able, like I said, to have one on my table on my hands, streaming that, and then having another one on my face And another interesting thing that I did for the silent moments that you find that can sometimes be awkward, I actually had music playing from my computer that was a flamenco artist from Barcelona. So I was able to have that kind of filling in the blanks. So there are little things we can work with technology that help.
Yeah, and then maybe one addition to that, Hannah, because I think you already really understand how to keep it engaging for people. So back to the original question, we were not able to find any real alternatives in terms of technology. So I think Zoom, it definitely works. At the same time, it was also lacking certain features where we felt like this is really going to drive engagement. So that's the reason we decided to build our own platform, and we're not going to suddenly become a tech company. We really see it as a combination between good technology and really good content with great people like Hannah. But with that platform, it becomes a lot easier to run polls. So with this experience in Rome, there can be a poll like, should Gabi, the local guide, go to the gelateria to buy an ice cream, or should he buy an espresso? You can decide, and based on the results, he will continue his tour. And all those little things, that's something that is way easier if you can build that into your own platform. So if you would like to see more of that, if you come to our booth, there's colleagues who are able to give you a short demo and answer your question in even more detail.
Okay, that sounds really good and also really interesting. Let's continue with the next question for now. We have Michaela. She says, play is so important in keeping individual and team spirits up. What are some ideas you would recommend to incorporate play in team activities?
Hannah.
Yeah, so again, I think that activities, learning something and doing something together is can really help engage that. I'm sure that there are other ways of kind of playing games and other things, but this learning a new technique like painting really brings people together because I think that I noticed that a lot of people are nervous who haven't done it before. And so when everyone's doing it together, everyone's learning together, and you really feel a togetherness.
Yeah, I totally agree, Hannah. I remember a couple of weeks ago we did a big online travel event. And one night we hosted a kind of happy hour / networking event. And we did an online game show, which was really geared towards travel, but we brought in different people. So there is a little bit of friendly competition. And I think that also really helps to incorporate play in those experiences. So yeah, it's a really good question, and it's important to make that happen.
Yes, and I can agree with all that you've actually said. Indeed, to also keep it nice and casual for sometimes during this event, for instance. Then I think we have the last question for today. We have Ikram who's saying, so you mentioned connections are essential, which he agrees with, but how can we draw a line between meaningful connections and, let's say, more professional ones? Matthijs?
That is a good question. I guess professional connections are important, right? We all know that it's important to work towards your goals, to realize your strategy. But what are you going to do if you don't have any personal connections? And I think especially today, it's a very thin line between your work life and your personal life. And I guess my take is that personal connections really help to understand your colleagues, your team members, to work together in a better way, and not just about work. I would say it's more than that. So if we can find ways to build those personal connections, I think even in a professional setting, you will see the benefits of that. And that's not always the other way around. With professional skills, you're not always going to improve the personal side of things. So in the end, for me, personal connections, that's where it all starts.
Yes, then thank you very much, Matthijs, and also so Hannah for being on stage with us. I think we have no further questions left in the chat. So I would like to thank both of you for joining me on stage. Then before I leave you, I would like to let you to remind you that Withlocals also has an exclusive giveaway during the entire event. To participate, make sure to join us at our Withlocals for Business booth and attend our demos happening throughout the day. The giveaway for that is a unique and interactive virtual experience for you and your team to keep all of you engaged and connected. All you have to do is leave your name or company name in the chat during the live demos at our booths, and from there we will randomly select the winner live during our last demo at 2:50 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 8:50 p.m. Central European Time. But for now, we hope to see you back in approximately 20 minutes, because at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 3 p.m. Central European Time, we will go to the Withlocals. We have Withlocals host taking you on a virtual tour through Rome, as Matthijs already mentioned, and that's all on stage 2. So hopefully see you soon on stage 2.